attend tonight. He's
Okay.
absent.
I'll open the workshop. Number one, it says certification of standing fees.
Okay, the individuals that are listed above are all, the citations, utility bill, lawn mowing. Those are the ones that we normally do about this time. We will officially be certifying them on November 8th, but tonight, when they were sent out their letters, tonight was their public hearing to attend to contest their amount. So obviously nobody has showed up. So we will then move forward to November 8th, by resolution to certify these to the county for 2022. Okay?
Okay. Next is the snow hauling.
Snow hauling contract will be extended one more year, with is it AAR or ARR? I don't remember. AAR. At the same rate as last year, we're just extending it one more year as stated in the RFP contract that they signed last year. They can't do it for one more year. So, that is on the agenda tonight for approval.
Okay. And they didn't have any violations or anything last year, did they?
No, and they were very reasonable.
Okay. Next would be my flood survey.
The flood survey has started. A letter went out to all property owners that Bolton and Mink will be on their property performing survey work. We've received, both Bolton and Mink and I have received a couple calls this week in concerns of it because it's hunting season and just being curious as to what's going on. This survey is being completed with the money that was received through a DNR grant pass-through. At the beginning of 2020, myself, Tom Osborne, and Brent Christensen went to the Capitol asking for money to perform a survey to acquire more data points to construct a model of what the city could do to help with flooding issues. The money was given to the DNR as a pass-through to ensure that the survey was complete to DNR and FEMA standards. The city, Bolton, Mink, DNR, and FEMA will be working together on this project. So if anybody comes up and asks you about it, on the back you will see, I sent you guys a copy of this. On the back you will see the whole area that is being taken care of, all upstream and all downstream. So when they build the model, they can see what the impacts of both sides are. So, all those farmers are calling and being concerned.
So, when the survey's done, is that gonna allow them enough time to get results before they publish the flood map?
Yes, they are actually extending it out an additional month for us. So if we want to contest the lines, this may help us in regards to contesting the lines that are currently drawn.
Okay. And, can the property owners refuse, the survey people on their property if they choose to?
Technically, by rights, yes. And you don't need to allow them on their property. That's why the letter went out to tell them what is going on. But it would only be to the property owner's benefit to be on your property because of the fact that the more data points that are collected, the better model that can be generated. And so we can look at different ways of the flooding and how we can.
So are any of these farmers also having flooding issues?
Yep, and that is another thing, you know, these data points are going to be handed over to the DNR and FEMA. So this can help
So this would actually benefit them?
This should benefit them because they would be taking data points from their property that if they're having issues that then they're established. That's the whole point, is that this survey wasn't for us to hold on to just for ourselves. It's for the FEMA and the DNR bank for them to use that data to help the whole area.
When you said contest the lines, what did contest, what would there be to contest?
Okay, so FEMA draws where the floodplain is, and so the maps came out to us
June, July?
June, July. And the lines for the flooding have changed, they've actually increased. We would like to contest a few of the lines because we don't feel that it has ever gotten that high.
Okay, gotcha.
So for where you live, Glenn, the line comes to the other side of the street about a foot and a half
Or
down
the curb.
from the curb. So theoretically, that puts the Historical Society, the Edge of Tony Downs, all those people.
Fourth Street?
Yeah, all that's all. So, and they were giving me 100-year statistics and all this, and I told them, I've never, and I've been here for most of the major flooding, but only once as the water ran across Highway 15 going south out of town and we had to close the road, or is it twice?
Only seen it once, I think.
Only once, and that didn't come up to where they drew the line. And my question is, where does common sense come? And they said, well, the engineers. And I says, where are the engineers in common sense? And they finally told me I couldn't talk anymore, and because they didn't want my opinion. They'd already drew their lines, and then this bill has been in the works for 2 cycles, or 3 cycles.
We just started to,
So anyhow, it finally got funded at the end of this year. So, it was in our essence to work with everybody, because I don't disagree. The other thing that happens when you put partial parts of your town in a floodplain, now those owners have to buy flood insurance. And flood insurance is really expensive. So, and then the next thing they'll do is tell us that we should find a place for those people to move those houses out of the floodplain if it becomes an issue. So, and that's what they did in other towns. But needless to say, we'll spend our money and we'll pick one battle at a time and see if we can make a difference.
Got it.
And maybe mitigate the problem by, if it's noted that the waypoints also show that there's a huge amount of growth in the extra channels, maybe we can get funding and permission from the DNR and FEMA to cut those pathways so the water doesn't slow down in town. Because there are a couple of channels that were dug, were they dug or were they were they already natural on the south side of the golf course?
Well, I actually heard they were done, but
But all I know is they're plumb full of trees and the water can't go. It collects garbage through the trees that are growing up.
so this is just a start.
Yeah.
A start to a big process, probably.
Okay. Any more on the flood thing?
Are they gonna give an opinion at the end, or what?
They put together some models for us, that was their whole intent on this. I don't know, Cody, do you remember when we met with the DNR back then? I thought you saw it, sat in there.
yeah.
Or there just wasn't enough to make a decent model, when we kept on calling back and forth, that was the whole
Yeah.
point of this.
Right. The point of the study was to get some sort of answer as to if something could ever be done.
Yep.
But I guess my question is, once the models are generated or whatever, are we gonna have to send it out for some sort of mitigation design? Or are we getting that as part of this study?
I don't know, so that would be my question to FEMA.
Yeah, I guess
Since
that would be the thing to
They're
know.
working hand in hand with us.
I mean, if this amount of money is just getting us the data points and the model build, and then we're gonna have to spend another $50,000
But
or
again-
$100,000 to,
This is in the whole start of the process.
no, I mean, I
I'll
get it.
probably be up there again asking for the next step and
But
the
what
next step.
I guess what I'm saying is, do we know what the deliverables of this are gonna be?
Would be
Is
just.
it gonna be just the model or the model and the mitigation plan?
I'm just gonna say the model at this time. I will get more information for you.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know if there's actually gonna be, you know, some mitigation options at the end that are, if there are possibilities, that we could actually say, yes, we can help protect the park and golf course and rest of the residents in town, but it's gonna cost, you know, cause that's gonna be the thing. It's gonna be not only the cost of the actual mitigation, but if this doesn't give us what our options are, then we're gonna have to spend money just to figure out what our options are past this. So then you're 3-4 steps away instead of just saying, yeah, if we could find, you know, $3 million, we can stop the park from flooding. Now you're like, yeah, we got the information to find out if we can maybe do it, but we gotta pay $60,000 to figure out what could be done if anything's feasible, and then maybe another $3 million after that to actually do it.
Well, at the time when we started the meetings,
So, and I don't know,
felt that this
I don't
was
know
the
if Bolton
first step
Mink or
in-
anybody would know that, other than
FEMA.
what they, yeah, what the actual deliverables are. If it's just gonna be the models, then you'll need an opinion from the DNR and FEMA as to
Well,
what could be
DNR
done.
would be, it was them generating the models.
Oh,
And then, because that was Cecile's problem, is that not only was there a major backlog that they were contending with, but there just wasn't enough information there to actually create an accurate model. And that is a big reason why Cecile was up there when I was at the Capitol. And that's why the DNR and FEMA are involved.
but the other thing is, I don't think it's just flooding in the park and golf course, it's also protection of the lift station or what we should do long-term
I'll just be
planning.
honest with you, that is the major thing, is the protection of our infrastructure.
Right,
I'm going to clarify that many times,
yeah.
cause that's the most.
Well, I mean, that changes what we might wanna do long-term planning for
Mhm.
that locational lift station and all the other things that go with that, especially if we're looking at Center Street and that project and all the rest, so. I mean, it's not pivotal, but it's a piece of information that could help us determine where stuff goes.
Alright, I had started this board. But-
Okay. Any comments on, flood survey? Then, we'll move on to the Royce property.
The city will take ownership of the Royce property after November 1st. So we will need to then move this item to the EDA, so, next council meeting, I would ask that the council then set an EDA meeting for the Royce property and then the government center moving forward. They will be handled through the EDA versus through the city. So after we take ownership on November 1st, we'll do the RFP, approving that in the EDA meeting and getting that out for advertisement. Sound okay?
What kind of timeline are you looking at?
It was set back a month because I was hoping to have ownership already, but we had to wait 30 days for something.
So
So
you're looking at taking requests for proposal through
November, probably.
through November, and then would you
making
like to
this-
have that property transferred by the first of the year, or what?
Would be awesome. That would be a major goal if we can make it happen. So next meeting, we'll have an EDA meeting if if I can have an approval on that one. Alright, so go on to the next item.
The government center, or we already covered that?
Oh, the government center, I'm just gonna give you, again, that will also be going to the EDA. But I did want to talk a little bit more about it today, just to get it out there that we will be starting discussions on this property. And so if anybody's interested in it, to come to the meetings to discuss. New government center is projected completion is November 2022. This property here has already been appraised. I have the appraisal up in my office. If you do go on, you can see the beacon with what market value this property is also. So really what we need to look at is this 3 properties, is it 2 properties or 1 property? And that all stems from the HVAC and the electrical systems here. So just things to think about, and I'll add anything if you want to add more to the list, and then creating an RFP, create a committee going forward. This will be an EDA item.
How old is the HVAC in this building?
Varies.
Which unit?
Yeah.
Which section? That's what's,
Okay, so then that's my second question is, so is it sectioned or is it one HVAC?
it's multiple.
Okay, got it, thank you.
And it's multiple, some of the wiring's been brought from one panel over to the other building, which would be on the other meter, you know, so some of that is commingled over the years. About the only thing that isn't commingled over the years would be the, wastewater. Those hookups, you can't unless you do major remodeling.
So, do we have an actual building plan set from the original building or any of the remodels? That shows a footprint of the building and any type of schematics as far as square footage and bearing walls and that type of thing?
Is there buried in the records here someplace, maybe? I guess I don't know
We
anything
can look
specifically.
through the plan sets, but I don't recall, but I was hoping maybe Rob, you saw something like throughout the last 17 years of planning for different scenarios in this town, and fire stations, or revamping this whole thing. You never saw an actual blueprint from
Well,
this
even for the
building?
remodel, that plan that was put together, an estimate, they had to have had something drawn.
Yeah,
The one that they came up with, that was completely,
yeah, they basically
Gutted
made that
the whole
all, got
thing.
it down to the,
But had they measured basically the exterior and just removed everything weight bearing and
mhm.
yeah, I never saw any of those plans, just
I-
the basic,
Rendering, we saw the
Rendering.
rendering of the front street, but
that
in
was
a
it.
very basic floor plan, but that's all that I saw.
Okay. I'm just wondering if at some point, I mean, depending on what we wanna do as a council, if it's gonna make sense to figure, you're gonna either have to sell it all as one, or you're gonna have to figure out what goes with what. You know, from a standpoint of, if you're gonna try to chop it up, whose wall is that?
Well, and that's where it gets a little confusing too, because, okay, Rob,
we have fuse boxes that are stuck in locations that turn lights
Crossover.
off in different sections of the building here that you would have never assumed that they would be related to each other. I mean, it's just an absolute convoluted mess.
So I get it's a dumpster fire, but I'm not so worried about the electrical as I am, and I think Randy's going with this is the load bearing. I mean, okay, so it's a mess. We're gonna have to start cutting lines here and fixing stuff there, but the physics of the load bearing then becomes a problem we can't change. Everything else can be redone, that can't.
the load bearing in regards to this up here,
Any of it.
Well,
What
regarding.
buildings are separate, you know?
Right, so
These buildings are all
what
attached to each
buildings
other.
can stand alone and what
There you go.
can't.
That's
okay,
what I was trying to say.
I got it now. And so we're looking at
the common wall between the Times Messenger, the common wall between the first side of City Hall and the second side of City Hall, then this one, and then that one.
I mean, at the end of the day, whether or not you can split this up into 3 properties, or if you have to sell it as one, all boils down to, I don't really care about the electrical or the HVAC. What I'm worried about is the structure.
The structure, it's either 3 or 1,
Well, think
I agree
the
with that.
The answer to that, what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah.
it's either 3 or 1.
I would assume anybody that would be interested in buying part or whole is gonna probably want an inspection, so.
Well, I mean, if it's either 3 or 1, then 2 is a possibility too. You know, I mean, realistically, you can split this side off. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be fire hall and city hall. You know, depending on the interested party.
I'm just gonna be quiet.
I mean, truthfully, but yeah, I get what you're saying. But yeah, I would say structurally, you just have to know what load bearing and what walls belong to what building, so you can define them.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that's a load there.
Or, right.
I mean, when you look at the outside, you see where the roof lines meet,
Right,
it's right there.
and that's what I'm saying, so you almost need that split out square footage wise as to where it could even be split up, if it could be split up.
The fire department is one, and the city hall is another.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm thinking is, that might make more sense from what we've heard for inches too, but
Yeah.
it really
I don't
depends.
think doing it all as one is gonna work.
Well, it could work, but that second party, or you know, that there would have to be some kind of
Agreement.
agreement or some type of, you know, plan as to what was gonna happen to it all if it was all sold as one. And that would all have to kind of come to light as part of the proposal, I think, cause are we on the same page that that's gonna kind of be the deciding factor?
Of what they're gonna develop it into.
Right.
That's,
Not necessarily the price they're gonna pay, but
Yep.
what's gonna end up on Main Street after it's done,
this
and
is-
what type of timeline they're looking
yes.
at to do it.
Timeline and development are the biggest things that are driving everything, it isn't so much the price. Cause we definitely don't want it sitting.
Because right now it's not on the tax, well, it's got an appraisal now, but we don't pay property taxes
Yeah.
on it, so. It's not a income generating until it's sold.
Right. But the other thing is, you know, this is our chance to try to help what's going on Main Street and generate more interest and stuff. This would be our responsibility to make sure it gets in the hands of the right developer that has the right plan and hopefully a goal that's great from an EDA standpoint and from
That grows the, Main Street and.
grows Main Street and
businesses
downtown
the-
businesses and gives opportunities to everybody that needs them or wants them. And
Mhm.
I mean, I think this is our chance to kind of use this to make Main Street better than than it already is, and it's already great, but there's a lot of momentum to build on there.
So, to get the point across, the development of this place is really the biggest thing about the whole RFP.
Right.
It isn't about how much money you can buy these for or whatever,
It's more about what's your plan and what is Medilia gonna get after your plan is executed.
Mhm.
You're here, completely agree.
So anybody else wanna add anything on for that?
But is this something that we're gonna market, or is this something where, how are we gonna go about that? I know there's been some interest already, but is it something where we're gonna have to bring a schematic of the building to the table so that they can figure out what they have for square footage, or are you just gonna give open tours for the next year, or?
No, you bring up a valid point, Andy, in regards to trying to find some sort of blueprint. because I don't really wanna give out tours.
You don't want people in here measuring every day to see,
No, they,
holding up different curtain colors and paint swatches and.
How do we not have blueprints in the park building?
I don't know.
I realize I'm
I
a new
really
guy,
have
but
to-
seriously, we don't have a plan somewhere that says what the layout of this building?
Some of the buildings from the 1800s, though. I mean, I don't know. Nobody.
And the fire hall was built when they were building fallout shelters until they cut the road up there and before they repainted the last time. Fallout shelters are still on the walls, so, and that was done by a couple of old retired carpenters that have been dead for 20 years.
So you can't ask them is what you're saying.
Yeah, and they probably didn't do much. They probably had a schematic for how the concrete was all poured because it was thick enough to withstand that fallout in the 50s. Probably not nowadays, even if it was.
Okay, so basically with my notes, how are we gonna market it? I really need to think about that, because this is a really big thing. It's not something that we just wanna put out there lightly, you know, we want people to really generate some serious interest and put their heart in, take pride, show us what you got.
I mean, short of the fire, what we do with this facility is gonna be the biggest thing Main Street's done in my lifetime. It's that big a deal.
So this is a great opportunity for us to give back to the EDA and, or for the economic development of Main Street.
Right?
So don't mess it up,
Don't mess it up.
Oh, wow.
It's all on you.
No, it's on you, you're the council.
Motion, it's all in
Come
the
on.
resolution. Do I have a second? Sorry.
But depending on
Somebody had to.
No
depending
pressure.
on the marketing and
We all
everything
thought it, you
else,
just said it.
we might wanna look at, you know, if there isn't blueprints, if we can't find any blueprints,
We're gonna have to do
have some
something.
kind of schematic of dimensional, what's here, maybe a virtual tour, maybe something that people can see what kind of mess they're getting into.
No.
Right?
It is got possibility. It's
Yeah,
not,
yeah, intrigue, that's what they call it,
yeah.
when you walk into a tomb, a dump, I don't know, what do you wanna call it? Walk back there.
It's not that bad.
But the part two of that conversation is also how we market it, and
Yeah.
we want to reach out to market that, because there are other resources that would be available to help fund that.
Right,
Let's look into that, Glenn.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you got on your City Hall project?
No, but we'll be bringing it to the agenda for next council meeting or next EDA meeting.
well, with these type of projects, are you thinking you're gonna have more than, like, workshop, EDA,
We're probably gonna have a standing EDA meeting.
EDA for a while?
Yeah, workshop, EDA meeting, standing planning commission meeting too. Patrick, you're gonna have to be here every time.
Whatever you feel is appropriate.
Well, I wanna follow through on that planning and zoning issue, that's for sure.
So going on to the next one, so speaking of the EDA, the next thing on the agenda, okay, so we talked about the Royce property and the current City Hall Fire Station redevelopment, but we also need to put on the EDA agenda the down payment assistance program. The reason for this is, down payment assistance program looks at your revenue or your income that comes in, and a lot of times they get hit with an 8% percentage on their down payment assistance because that hasn't been changed for so many years. And so people are opting not to do the down payment assistance because the interest rate is so high. So I would like us to look at that because I haven't had a down payment assistant loan go out for
2 years?
2 years. And then also at the EDA, I will bring in the status of all the loan funds and where the balance sheet is and where you guys sit in for funds and in regards to helping other businesses out or something like that. Marketing for open lots in town in Riverview Heights. I'm compiling that together for the EDA meeting also, just so that you guys understand what we have for available property to get rid of. And then property redevelopment and other thoughts on programs to increase tax values, long-term housing solutions. And you wanna comment on any of those, because I know those are some strong bullet points for you.
Yeah, I know, we kind of been talking about this, and it isn't that, you know, we're growing at a rate that we're gonna absolutely run out of stuff to build on in the next 2-3 years, but we are gonna end up, and I'm not saying, I don't wanna be the guy that looks at, you know, subdivisions or anything like that, but I'm saying that we are gonna have to start looking at making sure that these lots and stuff in town are marketed and developed at some point,
Yep.
I think.
Well, and they fit the criteria to be able to build a modern house versus a 1900s house. The size and setbacks don't fit some of these lots.
Right.
I think by bringing up these bullet points too, I think Heather and Michelle have put together a list in regards to, non-livable,
24 uninhabitable houses.
yeah, issues that we may have or whatever, but just getting to know our community and what we have and what we don't have and how we can move forward in making them more marketable.
Well, the other thing that we, you know, have talked about in the past, especially with the down payment assistance program and some of these other loan programs and stuff that are being kind of underutilized now.
Well, we gotta be careful because we did have the small cities development loans in here, business and residential, and I know that you can't do it for so many years. And
Right.
after you've done it, so we may be getting to the point that we possibly could look at it again. But I do know you can't have it for a couple of years. You gotta let other communities have it.
Yep. No.
So,
But I guess what I'm getting at is maybe there's better ways to, whether it's changing the parameters or changing the requirements for some of these programs to better utilize the money and get it back out into the hands of the public instead of having it, you know, just sitting there.
Patrick, I'll need your help in that regards though, is to look at the restrictions on some of those funds in allowing us to use that funding for different ways.
So, and part of what we talked about in the past, like for instance, this down payment assistance program, I realize that you're not gonna be able to pull that and change that funding structure or anything, but maybe we can better incentivize them purchasing a undervalued property or you know, and then figure it out so that we can use that down payment assistance to get them the funding to fix it.
Yep.
That type of thing too, so I don't know how that all works, but it would be nice to kind of figure out how to get that money into people's hands that,
Because I do know we sit with a nice little balance in that fund,
Yep.
but the reason for that is because we're not utilizing it.
right, there's
Because-
hasn't been anybody coming in to get it because the interest rates are,
The interest rate is based on your income, and so obviously if you haven't changed it for the last 10 years, we know that your income has gone up, and so by it
Income
going up, then the interest rate
and
goes
rates
up.
have gone down, so
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense in a lot of cases for,
no, it doesn't make any sense. I
Right.
wouldn't come here to get a loan at 8% if I'm going to the bank and getting a 2%. I mean, it
right.
doesn't make any sense.
So if we could do something where we're still giving the money out to first time home buyers, but maybe giving it out to first time home buyers that are buying houses to renovate
Or something.
or something like that, and find a new way to
Market it.
market it.
Yeah.
and successfully handed out to the public for betterment of the town.
Does anybody else wanna add anything to the agenda for the EDA that we'll be scheduling?
That's gonna need plenty of time just by itself.
I know.
Well, it might make sense that we are having a standing EDA meeting to kind of work through some of those processes.
Well, I think we have to until we get, especially just for this place, and resolve this.
Yeah, there's gonna be some bumps in the road, I'd assume.
So I would just then, do a 6 o'clock, or do you wanna go earlier? What do you guys wanna do? What's enough time for you guys?
6 o'clock.
Do a half an hour EDA, a half an hour workshop, and then council?
I would start with that, and if it doesn't work and we have to back it up, then we can, but let's start with that. That'd be my recommendation.
Okay, I just put some upcoming meeting agendas at the bottom, just, November 8th. We'll do the wage rates for the city and the fee schedule, and then certify the assessment resolution, that I talked about earlier. November 22nd, I don't have anything yet on there. December 13th, truth and taxation meeting, and 2022 tax levy resolution for final. That's all that I have on the agenda for the workshop tonight.
I only have one question, and maybe Andy can answer it. Did they, give a preliminary report of what they found when they did their work on our outage?
Yeah,
Bad?
no,
Well, that's good.
it wasn't paper coated bus bar, it was epoxy coated bus bar, so it's got a little longer life expectancy.
Ah,
And the initial test on the transformers all came back positive. So.
that's
works it.
good.
I found out yesterday that my refrigerator hadn't been running properly since the outage, so ice cream was a little soft.
It's made that way, it's saucer.
So did you
Try to find a manual for a refrigerator online.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, it didn't go real well. Called a couple places today. Ended up spending $5 on an internet Ask Me.
$5 on a question?
Yeah, to get in touch with an actual appliance rep. Isn't that sad nowadays? God, what a gig. He just texted me back, God, you might have to buy a new board. Thanks.
You spent $5 for that?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's one of those where you're like, seriously? dude?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I said. Okay, that was worth 50 cents.
That's all I got, unless you
It
guys
is
gotta have
working
anything
properly
else.
now.
But that,
You have anything else?
I didn't plug it for over an hour.
anybody else?
Said-
If not, then I'd
We did
entertain a
that.
motion
Sometimes
to
we'll
adjourn.
So,
I got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Cody and who?
Glenn.
Glenn.
seconded.
So,